Alright, in this video we're going to look at how to make a dock wheel, and this dock wheel can go clockwise. As you can see here, I have three different examples. So we can go clockwise infinitely. As you can see, that's exactly what I'm doing here, or we can go counterclockwise. So we're rotating now. The animations may look a little jacked up here. That's because of visor. That has nothing to do with my actual cell phone screen. Like, I'm looking at my cell phone right now and they're animating just fine. But nonetheless, what I'm talking about here is that we can go infinitely in one direction or infinitely in another direction. And the three examples I have here, they all are kind of different in the way that we have the rotation set up. Here we have half a wheel showing, whereas here, we have a quarter of a wheel with a little bit of animations going on in the background, and then we have this one over here kind of static, but then again, they're all set up a little bit different. I'm going to focus on one kind of like where we have it in the corner, where we have a quarter of the wheel showing. This little preset here, this is a template. You can definitely create touches for these things. This one I'm going to post up on Dark Skittles because the request I actually got several requests for the dock wheel, and you can load this preset, incorporate your own components or what have you, and that way when you touch these things you can have different things showing up. But I'm going to start from scratch, and we're going to go over all these global variables, and we're going to create one of these that go in the corner. So let's go ahead and have a look. I already have some of this stuff set up, so I'm just going to go load a preset, and let's do the dock wheel 2. So this is a blank preset with the exception of the globals. The globals are left, right. Well, that one's down here. Let me slide that back on up here to the top. Go over them in order. So each one of these, we got two number global variables here, left, right, up, down. That's going to allow us to move. When we create this thing, we'll be able to move it all around the screen, but ultimately we're going to want it right down here in the bottom left-hand corner or the bottom right-hand corner. I'll just make one in the bottom left-hand corner. So that's a number global variable. I have both of these set to negative 720 to positive 720. Same thing for up, down. We have a list global variable. 1, 2, 3, 4 is what's inside of this list. And basically, since we're creating a corner one, we're going to have 4 pieces. Because when we do it in the corner, we have a quarter of the wheel showing up, so we want 4 pieces. So go is set as 1, 2, 3, or 4. Dir is the length of time for the animation. That's a number global variable. I have it set from 0 up to 10. Of course, you can have these lasting longer. You can set it however high you want. Ease, right now I have it set to normal. This is a list global variable that has straight, normal, bounce, and overshoot. We can customize the way that the wheel rotates. LR is a list global variable with a L and a R. This is going to tell tell KLWP whether we're going left or right, whether we want to rotate one way or the other. And what else do we have here? Scale. Scale obviously is going to allow us to scale the dock to make it bigger or smaller, and I'll have it set to 100 for right now. So those are all of our global variables. Let's make this full screen. I wish I did remember to do this more often when I was doing these tutorials, but here we go. So from scratch, let's create everything. The first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to put everything inside of overlap groups, and I'm going to call this one the background. There's a couple of things we want to do when we create this background. You don't have to make this, but I'm going to make it anyway. This is going to be like the back part of the wheel, so to speak. So for background, let's go ahead inside of here and let's add a shape. Let's position this overlap group in the center. And now let's go back to that shape. I'm going to make this shape a square. I'm going to make it very big. We may have to adjust our number global variables. I'm going to make it up to 500. What this is going to do, the only purpose this square serves as is for us to have a big enough area so that when we start applying some padding to our icons and things, it's not going to get everything off-centered. So make that square very big. I'm going to make the color transparent because I don't need to see it. I just want to have, this is going to be like our region that we can work. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it semi-transparent for right now. But this is the region that we can work inside of, and as long as this thing doesn't start changing and shifting on us, because when you start padding things, things can get shifted around. But I'm going to come back in a little while and make this completely transparent. Alright, so that's that shape. Now let's actually make the background. So the background, I'm going to add a circle and I'm going to give it a color of somewhat bluish, something like that. And let's make this shape a circle, and let's make it fairly big. I think 300 is pretty good for right now. You can go a little, I mean, if we go too much bigger when we start applying padding, we'd have to adjust this square size, but I think 300 is just fine. Now, let's back out of there. Let's add another shape. I want to cut a hole in this thing. So let me go to paint. Let me set this to clear. And what this, now you might say it just cleared out everything, but if we go back and adjust the size of this thing, this is going to allow us to have a hole, and it's going to be a transparent hole, so we can see whatever's in the background of this entire thing. Now, just for the sake of this video, I mean, like I said, the square, it has no purpose other than to keep everything inside of it nice and centered. So I know I said I was going to make it transparent later. I'm going to go ahead and do it now because it's an eyesore. But basically it keeps everything from, like I said, getting off centered when we start applying some padding. So here's our background. Some things that we want to apply to this background are some of our globals. Some of our globals, that being the position of the entire overlap group background. I have it centered, but I want to be able to move this thing based on the global variable left, right. That's going to move it left, right. And then the Y offset is going to be the up, down global variable. All right, that's going to allow us to move this thing quickly left, right, up, down. Once we make this, we're going to put it down here, and you're going to see how all of this is going to work together. Other things I want to do to this background, I want to go to its layer, the entire overlap group. I want to go to its scale, and I want to set that to the GV scale. So kind of showing you what all those global variables are going to do. What we can do now is we can move this entire thing left and right. As you can see, we can move this thing up and down, and then we can come down here and we can also adjust the scale now. We can make it smaller or bigger. All right? And I'm going to leave it right there. It's fine where it is, because what we're going to do with this, even though we're done with the background, let me make sure I got all the globals applied to it. Yeah. I want to copy and I want to paste. Because now I have the same globals, the same scale, the same up, down, left, right stuff, except now we're ready to create some icons. Whoops. And all we're going to do is we're going to create icons 1 and 2, but this is going to be referred to, I'm just going to put a little reference here. Go is 1. Okay? This is like our first section that we're going to make here. All right. So inside of here, I don't need the two circle pieces anymore because this is going to be sitting over top of that background we just created. You still want to keep the square there, but again, because that's going to help keep everything centered. It's just a big spot for us to work inside of. Now, also inside of this icons 1 and 2 go as 1 overlap group, I'm going to add another overlap group, and I'm going to call this one icon 1. All right. So inside of this overlap group, let's add a shape. And I'm just going to keep it white for this tutorial. I think I had them white anyway. Circle slice, and let's bump this on out here to where that looks pretty good. I want a little bit showing here, you know, adjust this to your liking, and then I'm going to adjust this a little bit, and I'm going to bump that down about 10. Let me save that, go back to the home screen, and see how that looks. Looks pretty equally spaced on both sides. All right. Now, the thing about this, the angle, I want to keep it at 45 because if I go adjusting the angle too much, I want to create two little icons here, and ultimately I'm going to put them down here in this corner. So I want to see these two at one time. There's one for right now. And something else we want to add here is going to be the actual icon itself. So I'm still inside of icon 1 overlap group, font icon, and I'll just leave it as a star. Let's adjust its paint. I'll set it to black. And I probably needed to bump the size down a hair. So let's bump it down to about 70. And let's see if that's going to look pretty good. We want to position this thing. Let's apply some left padding and then some bottom padding to put this up somewhat centered inside of there. Let me save that, go back to the home screen, and that is okay by me. It's not perfect, but hopefully you get the idea. All right, so that's our first icon. And notice it's sitting right. I mean, it's sitting right in terms of the rotation and stuff. I haven't really applied any rotation. But now, let's come back and copy and paste this, and let's apply an icon 2. Again, this is going to be the second part of our little corner, or this little quarter that we're going to be showing. So I'm going to go to icon 2. Now this thing, with the way we have it set up, the way we have the padding set up, we have it sitting inside of an overlap group. If we go to its layer and we go to rotation and we set it to manual, if I rotate this thing 45 degrees, or just notice as I rotate this anyway, it's keeping it inside of this wheel. And that's the way we have it set up based on these overlap groups. I want to set it to about 45. And that's going to push these two pieces together. Well, if you want a little gap in between here, let me show you how to fix the gap. I'm going to back out. I'm going to come back to icon 1. I'm going to copy that circle slice. So I'm back in icon 1 now. I'm going to copy and paste that circle slice. And if we want a little bit of a gap between them, obviously the icon went away. If I go to paint, I set this to stroke, and then we set this to clear. It's going to clear a little bitty gap. I'm going to apply a little bit of stroke, not much. And if I save this and I go back to the home screen, we see a little bitty gap. I'm going to come and apply that same gap to this one. That way we have, perfectly lined up pieces here. But again, this is just a quick way to get a gap between them, but still maintain that 45-degree rotation. So icon 2, I'll tell you what, let me just copy, and now let me go to icon 2, and I'm going to paste that same thing I just created. So when I paste that in there, we save this, we go back to the home screen, now we have a gap between them, everything looks good. But what you may have noticed is that this icon, notice it's kind of rotated as well. Well, we need to apply some rotation to that, plus I'm just going to change the icon anyway. So I'm inside of icon 2. I'm going to go to this icon and let's change it to something that clearly is going to look crooked. So I'm going to choose the mic, and notice the mic is crooked. Well, we can go to the mic's rotation. We can apply some manual, and I think we need to bump it on because, here it's at 0. We want it to wear straight up, so that's going to be right around 315. And again, it works based on degrees of 45. So notice if we save this, we go back to the home screen. Now we have two pieces here. We're ready to animate once we create some buttons. Alright, so our buttons. This is where things will get a little bit tricky. What we want to do here is we want this thing to rotate this way at a certain time, and then eventually we want it to come back around and come back out this way. Or, not just that, we want it sometimes to go out this way and eventually come back in from this direction. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. I did a video on the infinite cycle, I think that's what I call the video. It's going to have some of the same characteristics of the way we get this animation to work. So going back to root, let's create some buttons. And we don't have to put these inside of an overlap group. All these are going to be is buttons. So I'm going to do, let me get an arrow real quick. And this is going to be the right arrow. Position this in the center right. Again, this is not going to be animating. This is just a button so we can touch. So I'm going to go to touch, and we want it to do two things. The first thing we want it to do is to toggle our global switch go, and this is that 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just going to choose next value. There's another touch that we want to apply to this. We want to apply the LR. Not the left-right movement thing where we're moving everything around, but the LR list global where I either have it set to a L or R. And since this is the right button, I always want it to set it. When I touch this, I want it to be R every single time. Very similar, we want to come back, and I'm just going to copy and paste this button. But now, obviously, this needs to be a bold arrow left, and we want its position to be in the center left, okay? And when we touch this one, we want to toggle global switch go, but we want to do previous value. That's going to let us count backwards, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. And now the LR, we automatically want this to be set to L every time we touch this. Alright, for teaching purposes, I'm going to add a text global variable. up here near the top. And let's position this so I can see it. Bump it down a little bit, and let's bump its size up. And what do I want to see out of this thing? Two things I'm interested in. I'm interested in what is GV go, okay? And then is my left or right, the LR thing, is it L or is it R? So let's go ahead and set those. So we got a L and we got a 1. So let me check this, save it, go back to the home screen. And now as I touch this, what's going to happen is it's going to change this to a R and it should start counting up. So notice it's R, 2, 3, 4, and that should go back to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice the R is not changing. That's going to change when I come over here to this one. Now we got L, and now it's counting backwards. Perfect. That's exactly what we want to happen because we need both of these things to make this thing animate correctly. So going back into KLWP, let's work on the animation. And something else too, before we dive too much further into it, by us copying and pasting that background to create this icons 1 and 2, I mentioned it, but now if we go in here and we go the left-right route, notice everything's moving. Even though we have two different overlap groups, everything's moving together, and then also we had the scale. So notice as we scale this thing, these white wedges, if you will, are staying in the same spot, but we can definitely adjust the size of this thing. So that's a pretty good perk to have. Keep that in mind. All right, so icons 1 and 2. Here we go. So going to the icons 1 and 2, I've already got the animation set up. I paused the video and made sure I had my coding right again because it is a little, it's crazy how this works. But let me show you what happens. So animation, you want to react on a formula. And in this formula, since this is our go is 1, basically I want to see this. This is going to be down here, and I want to see this if GV go is 1. Well, here's the formula. If GV go is not equal to 1, then I want to animate it. Otherwise, I want to leave it the same, or bring it back, so to speak. Okay, so with that said, if we go to action, set your action. Let me take this off for 1 second. And make sure you set it to rotate. So you're going to have to actually come in here, click on rotate, but then we want to apply a code to this thing. And this is what's going to allow us to go one way or the other infinitely. Here's what the code is. If GVGO equals 2 or all of this, we want to rotate it. Otherwise, we want to rotate inverted. Okay, well, let's talk about the first thing. If GVGO equals 2, let's talk about that. So if GVGO equals 2, right? Here, notice it rolls off. And what's going to happen is when we put it down here in the corner, it's going to roll off the screen. Now, what we want it to do, notice when I do 3, it did a switch, which is fine. You're not going to see this because we're going to have this dock in the corner. When I go to 4, nothing happens. But when GVGO is 1, it's going to come back in from this side, which is what we want to happen if we're cycling 1, 2, 3, 4. The other piece that we have to take into consideration is this though. What if I'm at 2 and I want to go back? Check out what happens. It goes back. And if we don't have this set up right, let me come in here and delete some stuff. Check this out. I'm going to delete this part right here. So if GVGO is 2, we want to rotate. Otherwise, we want to rotate inverted. This is going to be jacked up for right now. Now, it's going to look good here, and it's going to look good here. Boom, it comes back in. And also, if I go back to 4, I want it to go this way, which it's going to do. 3, 2. Now, look at where it is. So if I'm going backwards, I want it to rotate this way, but watch what's going to happen. See how it comes back that way? We want it to be coming in from that way. And this isn't going to make much sense until we actually come in here and apply all these other wedges, because it's a weird concept here. I understand that. But the other code was if GVGO is equal to 1, and think about it, this is when it's going to be animating back. It's going to be animating back because our formula is if GVGO is not equal to 1, we want to animate it, which is going to rotate it off the screen. Otherwise, we want to bring it back. So now this part of the code is when GVGO is going to be 1, so it's going to be coming back into that corner. You'll be able to see it. But not only that, GVGO is going to be equal to 1, and we have to be pressing our left button. So, and GVLR is equal to left. by us doing this, let me close my parentheses up. So you got an or statement here. You have this or this junk, and it's important to put this in parentheses. So now, if we go to 2, I want it to go this way, which it's going to do. And then 3, 4. Now when I come back to 1, it should be coming in from this way, which it's going to do. Boom. And now if we go backwards, it's going backwards. And now it's going to do a little skip right here. Now watch what happens. So now GVGO is getting ready to be 1, and GVLR is going to be L because I'm about to press my left button. And as you can see, it's coming back backwards, so to speak. Tricky. Now, let's go ahead and apply a second piece, and we can really start to see this thing come to life. So I'm going to take all this junk, copy, paste. So now we have icons 1 and 2, but this is going to be, we can call it icons 3 and 4, but I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to name this one, I don't even know why I called it icons 1 and 2, but this is when GVGO is going to be 2. This can be icons 3 and 4 if you want to call them that. All right. So this is icons 3 and 4. I'm not going to come in here and rename these. We don't really have to rename these. Right now I'm going to come in here and change this star. Let's change it to something different. Let's make it a radio. And that looks still pretty good. It's not hanging outside of the white too much, if any at all. And now let's come down here and change the other icon from a mic. Since we had that mic rotated, remember that earlier, how we rotated the manual piece to 3? Oh, that needs to be 315. I had it set to 314. My bad. No big deal. And if we come and set this to, what's something that's clearly going to have to look vertical? Okay, the AZ, whatever. Boom. Notice how it's still straight up and down, whereas if we didn't have this rotation set correct, it would be sideways because we rotated that entire icon group. As you can see right here, the icon 2 overlap group, its layer, we did have it rotated. So now we have to animate this one a little bit differently. Now before I do that, my OCD is kicking in, so I'm going to come back in here to that mic icon. Remember how I said that wasn't rotated correctly? I'm going to bump that back up to 315. So no worries there. Now here's what we want to happen to the icons 3 and 4, the radio and the AZ thing. So I'm going to come down here to the icons 3 and 4. Let's go to its animation. Since we copied and pasted, everything's going to be the same, but we have to obviously change the way when this one animates in. So now I'm talking about when go is 2. So I need to come into my formula, change GVGO not equal to 2. All right, now that's doing some crazy stuff. We're going to fix all that right here in a second. Now, how do we want this thing to rotate? Well, just like a while ago, if we're going from 1 to 2, we wanted it to rotate. Well, if we're going from 2 to 3, we want it to do the same thing. Or if GVGO is equal to 2 and GVLR is left, we want it to do this rotate as well. Otherwise, we want it to rotate inverted. Now watch what's going to happen here. Let's check this and check out how this is setting up. So right now, GVGO is 1. That was the star in the microphone. You're not going to be able to see this because we're going to bump this thing down here to the bottom left-hand corner. All we're going to see is this right here. Now, I tell you what, let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to go to globals. Well, no, not yet. Not yet. All right, so if GVGO becomes 2, this should slide in, this should slide down. Boom. It's starting to look like a uniform wheel. And if we keep on boom, now this is going to look crazy, but notice that 2 slid off when it becomes 3. 4, this is crazy stuff happening, but we're not going to see this, folks. And now here we should see the star and the mic pop up here to this corner. Boom. And now again, we're going back. So now it's starting to, okay, you see this? Now it's starting to look good. Now when I go backwards, I want this to go this way. That's exactly what it's doing. Now when I press it again, this one should slide out of the corner. As you can see, it is. So I hope you're getting the idea here where we have to use the LR and the GVGO to get this to work the way it's going to. Now, to fix this even further, let's go ahead and move our stuff. So I'm going to do some up, down. Yeah, it's going to knock some things off. But the minute I come in here and, okay, once I save this and go back to the home screen, everything should be back to where it should be. Yeah, everything's good now. So we want to position this over here in this corner. Let me go into KLWP and let's position that in the corner. And now it's going to still animate. Okay, that's good enough. Now let's just bump this on over right in there. It's probably going to be a nice number, maybe like 360. That looks pretty good. And the up down, I want it to be maybe 640-ish, something like that. Okay, so that's moving everything. And remember also we can do our scale. I'm gonna come back and apply the duration. So notice the scale, everything. I'm gonna make it nice and big so we can see it. Let's save this. Let's go back to the home screen. Now if you recall, GV Go when it's 1, that was when we had the star in the mic. Now when GV Go becomes 2, this stuff should slide down and the next piece should slide in. As you can see, that's exactly what's happening. Now when we do all this, like I said a while ago, you notice some crazy stuff was going on. But we have to envision, okay, GV Go is about to be 1. 1 should slide in, as it does. Here comes 2. Now, suppose we want to go back. You see how it's rotating in the opposite direction? That's exactly what we want. Now, if I make this become 4, 1 should go off that way. Now, what we're ready to do, y'all, is we're ready to add icons, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and then we can call it a day. Now, before I do that, though, I should have done this back at the beginning, but it's okay. Let's go to animations for the 1 and 2 when Go is 1. Let's apply some quick pieces here. Ease, remember we created a global variable for that, and we called it GV Ease. So boom, we can quickly change the way that it animates. And the duration, we had a global for that as well. That was GV Dur. And is there anything else? Very important. Oh my gosh, how did I forget this? You want to set the amount to 25% for each one. For each one of these animations, you want to set the amount of rotation to 25% or 25. That way it don't do a full rotation. Very important. Probably when I go back and edit the video, you're going to see where I type this in anyway. But the amount needs to be 25. All right, so let's back out of here. And let's go and do the same stuff for icons 3 and 4. Its animation. Let's apply the ease. And let's do the GV Dur. Okay. Now, let's copy the thing we just did, and we're changing just a few pieces of our animation. So, copy, paste. This is going to be icons 5 and 6, and this is going to be when GV Go is equal to 3. So 5 and 6. Let's go in here. Let's go to its animation. Let's change the formula. Now we want to do this animation. We want it to rotate off the screen when GV Go is not equal to 3. Notice we did copy over all our codes, the GV Dur and all that stuff, but we want to come in here and change this code. So right now, if GV Go, the 3, the icons 5 and 6, they're going to slide off to the right or clockwise when GV Go is 4. But that's not the only time I want that to happen. I'll also want it to slide back in from the right direction when GV Go is 3, because it's going to be animating back in. And that's what I was talking about earlier with the, what was it, GV Go was equal to 1. So that's where the left right's going to play into here. Let's go ahead and check that. I think that's going to be good. I'm not even going to test anything. I'm just going to copy and paste that one I just did. And this is going to be icons 7 and 8. And this is when GV Go is going to be 4. All right, so here, animation, set our code if GV Go is not equal to 4. Let's go to its code. So now, what's going to happen here? Because remember, 4 is the last part of our GV Go. So this means when GV Go becomes 1, we want it to animate off the screen, and we want it to be rotating clockwise. So that's what I have there. Or if GV Go is equal to 4, which means it's going to animate back in, and if I'm pressing the left button, I want it to animate back counterclockwise, but since it's coming back in, it's like the opposite of rotate. It's crazy. I mean, this was a lot of trial and error to get this work. It's hard to explain. But since it's going to be animating back in because GVGO is 4, it's going to animate back in from the opposite way that it was animating out, if that makes any sense. That's why you have to have it set to rotate here. But everything should be good here. Let's save this. Let's go back to the home screen. And now notice, okay, GVGO is 1. Oh man, something I didn't do. Dagnabbit. I didn't change any of these other icons. Let's go do that. So 1 and 2 was the star and the mic. This one here was the radio and the whatever, or the A to Z thing. I remember that now. Let's come down here to icons 5 and 6. Let's just change these. So 5 and 6, let's make it whatever. Hearing. And then let's come down here. Change this one very quickly. Invert colors, whatever. And then let's go change 7 and 8. That way we can clearly see all of these things are animating the way they should be. I'm just coming here and changing the icons of each individual piece. Don't want to change the size. Hopefully everything's going to stay nice and centered. $sign. Alright, cool. So save it, go back to the home screen. So now, GVGO is 1. That was the star and the mic. That's what started this whole crazy tutorial. And now if we go to 2, this should slide off. 2 should slide in from that way. Let's see what happens. Boom. Okay, let's go ahead and go to 3. When we go to 3, this should slide this way. It should rotate, and the other one should slide in from that way. Boom. Now when we go to 4, this should slide this way, and 4 should come in from this way. Boom. All right, and now if we go back to 1, 4 should slide down. The 1 should come in from this way. And as you can see, so we got that rotation perfect. It's an infinite rotation, and you don't see any of the crazy switcherooing going on back here in the background that we saw a while ago. All right, now let's make sure it goes the other way. So I'm just going to go back. Well, here we go. And as you can see, it is working. So at 1, let's go the other way. Notice 4 is coming from this way. That's pretty cool, huh? Because a while ago, 4 was coming from this way. There's 4 right there. But if we go backwards, notice it's actually going, it appears to be a wheel that is going backwards. And that is what makes this relatively cool. I think it's a neat concept. But it's given the illusion that all of this stuff is really on a wheel when in fact it's 4 separate groups and they're animating based on rotate or rotate inverted, which is, it ties in these 2 global variables, whether I'm going to the right or clockwise, or I'm going to the left, which is counterclockwise. And as you can see, it is working quite nicely. Again, it's hard to explain that concept of where, you know, we're here at 3. If I want to go back to, say, 2, if I go back to 2, I want the 3. Check it out. See, the 3 is going to go this way. The 2 is going to come back from that way. Whereas if I press this way, 2 should slide out this way, and 3 should come in from this way. And that's exactly what's going on. Weird concept, tinker around with it. This is the one I'm going to share on KLWP Toots. And then one more thing to show you as well is definitely going to be the duration of these animations. So as you can see, you know, the animation's kind of going like this. If we come over here back into our globals, let's change the duration. Let's make it like 1. It's going to be a little bit slower. See that? Whereas we come down here and bump it down to like 3, it's going to be a lot faster. And then also the ease, the only one that doesn't work real well in this particular technique, the half wheel works good. The overshoot, it kind of, you know, it doesn't show the other icon coming in. I'm sure there's a way to do that. I did not try to diagnose that, but like let's set this to bounce and let's set this up to like 8. And let's save this. Let's go back to the home screen and here we go. Boom. See the bouncing effect? And it's going to bounce in both directions. Pretty cool effect. You know, so adjusting the duration and adjusting the ease, tying in all these globals. This one was a tricky one to make, but again, it revolved around kind of using the same principles of the infinite cycle. I encourage you to go watch that video too, where I explain the left, right for this concept, and it works very, very similarly. And there you have it. That is an animated dock wheel that goes in both directions for your custom live wallpaper. And that's it for this video. I hope it helped.